Welcome back into the College Football Every Game on the Board podcast, segment number 3 with our closer here, Rob Vino at Rob Vino Sports. You can find him wagertalk.com. This is week number 8, talking every single game on the college football FBS board. Robbie, welcome on in, bud. How you feeling?
We're good today, Drew. It is, where are we? I try to do this every week. Is it week 8? I think it's week 8.
Week 8
of college football. Dear Lord, it zips by quick, but things are getting, a little bit more intense. Let's put it that way in college football. We saw some big results last week, and I don't know if there's a clear-cut number one in the country right now that you could definitively. Maybe you'd say Ohio State, but I think that's subject to change too. So we'll see. But we'll go through our section of the card here and see if we can't pick up a few winners last week really quick. I'll just, self pat on the back. Big college football weekend where the plays and the best bets especially were concerned. I think it was 9-3 last weekend. So hopefully we can duplicate that.
Absolutely. Rob Vino's seeing it well. And a little bit more wide open this season in terms of the national champion. But if you're new to Every Game on the Board, we hit every single game on the college football slate. We are doing this section 391, 392 down in rotation order, talking Mississippi and Georgia through the rest of the college football card, mostly Saturday night action here. So we're going to start it off in the SEC, Rob. Talk about two teams in the hunt. It is Ole Miss and it is the Georgia Bulldogs. We are seeing UGA -7.5 at home as the favorite, 54 and a hook being the total. So we get Kirby Smart, the defensive-oriented mind. We get Lane Kiffin, the offensive-oriented mind. These two guys used to be on the same coaching staff there at Alabama. One is the OC, one is the DC. They know each other well. 7.5 being the ultimate equalizer, mid-50s as the total here, Rob. What are you thinking between the hedges on Saturday?
It's funny because when you mention that, you bring back memories. One of these coaches used to get yelled at constantly by Nick Saban, and the other was the coach's pet, Kirby Smart. So couple of things here, Drew. Last week, obviously, Washington State took Mississippi to the wire unexpectedly. Mississippi, a huge favorite in that game. Washington State led late in that game, late third quarter at least, before I think Trinidad Chambliss scored a touchdown to take the lead. But you could obviously, if you're a situational handicapper, you chalk that up to they knew they had Georgia on deck and they were a 20-something point favorite. So we're just going to get out of here alive with a win, and we're really prepping for Georgia. And I think, if I'm right, I think it's Oklahoma behind Georgia. So Mississippi's got two big games coming up in a row. Probably spent way more prep time on those than they did Washington State. For the Georgia side, here's what I find crazy. And we saw this with South Carolina when Spencer Rattler was the quarterback a couple of years ago. Georgia's now had 6 different offensive line combinations. Can't get anything going because they can't put the same 5 up front. It's probably not going to be the same again this week. And if it does end up being the same, it'll only be the second time this year where they've had the same offensive line. And that doesn't bode well for a team that's not going well on offense, a team that can't really run the football the way they'd like to, a team with Gunnar Stockton at quarterback that really hasn't been outrageously good, and the passing game hasn't been that either. So Georgia has struggled to score. Ole Miss, they haven't struggled to score up until last week. Again, if you want to justify that, you probably can. I think Ole Miss is probably the way to go here, Drew, although the number has gone up from 6.5 to 7.5. I have to believe Ole Miss can stay within a touchdown of Georgia here. I personally think that they can win the game. Straight up, there's a couple of things for Georgia defensively that haven't been as tight as Georgia football usually expects. And Lane Kiffin, like I say, with what was probably an extra week to prepare, has probably got some stuff on that play sheet that he's drawn up purposely for this team. So for me, it would be plus 7.5 with Ole Miss.
All right, looking towards the dog there, hotty toddy. As we got next one up, staying in the SEC, Texas A&M and Arkansas. This also 3:30 Eastern, -7.5, pretty much across the board. That is the Aggies as the road favorite, 61.5 being the total. I believe this is in Fayetteville, Arkansas, although sometimes they play this game in a neutral location. Robbie, I'll throw it over to you. Texas A&M and Arkansas.
Yeah, so last week we got Bobby Petrino's debut with Arkansas. And as often happens, Drew, new head coach, big effort by the team, played Tennessee extremely tough, covered the number. But then the second game, do you deflate, or is this a little bit of a turn for Arkansas? I'm not sure that it's much of a turn for Arkansas. The defense was still bad, let's put it that way. The offense was still good. So really, it's kind of the same team on those two sides of the ball that we had seen going into the Tennessee game. They just happened to play the game really close. A&M here loses their number one running back, Le'Veon Moss. I'm not sure that, when you're A&M, generally losing a lead running back isn't the end of the world. You can still run the football. For me, I have a very tough time playing Arkansas simply because of the defensive discrepancy between these two. Like, A&M's a really good defensive team, and Arkansas is just a terrible defensive team. And A&M has shown a lot of offensive balance. They're not just, they used to be a run predicated team. Now they have it balanced out. Every team that's been balanced has moved it against Arkansas. This game generally, though, if you want to just play the history card here with these two, you get a lot of close games between these two teams, old foes from the old Southwest Conference. But I don't know that happens here, Drew. I just think A&M's too good at this point in time. And there could be, in my mind at least, and I know this is all subject to personal opinion, but I think Arkansas gave it all last week for Bobby Petrino and probably will continue to play hard for him. I just don't know that they'll get the same result against this team.
Makes sense, Robbie. As we got Ed Olson in the chat here on the Every Game on the Board YouTube, also on Twitter. We get Ed asking, Rob, being close to the Penn State debacle, how do we handicap the game this week? And Ed, thank you for chiming in. Anybody else out there, feel free to let us know your picks. Any questions, fire away on YouTube or on Twitter. And Robbie, I don't know if Ed was doing me a favor, but it's a good segue. Penn State and Iowa, actually the next game on the rotation, 7:00 Eastern here. 40 and a hook being the total. And we are seeing the Hawkeyes, -3-point home favorites. This is Penn State at Iowa City. Obviously a change here with the Nittany Lions. Anything on what Ed has to say here? And what's your view here with the Nittany Lions and the Hawkeyes going at it?
Yeah, I mean, the blow that Penn State took is twofold, right? They lose their head coach, they lose their quarterback. All their chips were in with Drew Aller. And now they have to turn to a redshirt freshman, Ethan Grunkemeyer, and you're going to put Ethan Grunkemeyer, on the road in Iowa against that defense. That's not easy. I'll say this, Drew, just being here, I'm probably, 2.5 hours from Happy Valley, but in the midst of a lot of Penn State alumni who were, I have to say, if I could give you a round estimate, probably 80% thrilled that Penn State chose to cough up $50 million to unload James Franklin rather than keep him around one more week. That loss last week was just devastating to a lot of fans and, fan base, media, et cetera, et cetera. I think the players themselves, I think you could say they were a little bit in shock. They didn't expect it to happen. It did happen. And I don't know how you respond by going on the road. If Penn State was home this week and they had the full home crowd behind them, I think maybe they could be elevated a little bit, including the new starting quarterback. But on the road in Iowa City, boy, that's a difficult task here. There's a lot of Penn State players, Drew, that came back. And I know this is an exterior point, but I think it matters. There's a lot of Penn State players that came back with hopes of getting a national title. Somewhat the same way Ohio State's players did last year, right? Ohio State had a lot of guys who could have gone NFL, but they came back and they got their national title. Penn State's guys came back and they're not going to get a national title. And you just wonder, is the effort put into finishing out a non-national title season, or is the effort put into keeping myself ready and healthy for the NFL combine, et cetera, all the stuff that comes with getting yourself into the NFL? So I wouldn't be on Penn State here. I think Iowa with Mark Gronowski at quarterback has shown flashes. Obviously, Wisconsin's not the Wisconsin that we've known the past few years, but 37-0 for Iowa is still a big deal. So I'd probably be on Iowa here. I think they can get the job done. I don't see, and again, this is all subjective, right? We're talking about a couple of head coaching changes in a row. I don't think this one is going to buoy the team any in this road game.
And Rob, you bring up the 80-20% just quickly. Like, what's your overall thoughts on what Penn State did? Do you think it was the right choice? What names do you think are in the hopper?
I think it had to be done probably. Immediately, Drew, around here, I can tell you that the buzz from fans and people close to the program, they want Curt Cignetti, the current head coach of Indiana. That's who they want. Whether or not it's who they'll get, I'm not sure. Cignetti might be happy where he is. He might want to come here, but they're going to get a top name. There's no question. And James Franklin will probably get himself another job fairly easily. It was an emotional goodbye. The new head coach here, the interim head coach, Terry Smith, is being given a chance to become head coach if Penn State performs well the rest of the way. But he noted that James Franklin did a ton for him and his coaching career. So like I said, it was emotional on a lot of fronts for this team. I don't know that they recover so quickly here this week against this team.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. And obviously from a handicapping standpoint, it changes a lot. But thanks for chiming in here, Ed. And we'll move down the list. Cincinnati and Oklahoma State, 8:00 Eastern kick here in Stillwater, -21 and a hook. That is the Bearcats as the road favorite. 57.5 being the total. So more than 3 touchdown favorite here for Cincinnati, but this team does look pretty strong.
Yeah, I laugh a little bit, Drew, because every week when you send me the link to the show and the rotation that we're going to cover, our section of the show, there's always a little side note that says, any games you don't have a lot on or don't want to talk a lot about, we'll go right by them. And this is one of those, right? What are you going to say in defense of Oklahoma State at any price at this point in time? You can't say anything. They're a bad football team. Again, another team fired head coach Mike Gundy a few weeks back, right? 73 new faces to start the year. They're just going nowhere. And Cincinnati's really good, in contention for the Big 12 title. So anything short of saying Cincinnati should blow them out, I don't think I could. I really don't. I think of ways to try and make a case for the Stillwater group, but I can't.
Yeah, Rob, just behind the scenes, guys, bringing in out there. Thanks for listening as always. You know, talking 60 to 70 games a week, and these guys put in a lot of work. I don't want this to become a show where it becomes, you know, you have to fill time. I don't want the guys to feel like that. So I want it to be more of a you know, handicapping, good information. And if you don't have good information, that's fine. But don't feel like you have to put in like filler words type deal. That's the only reason I write that, Rob.
I think we all appreciate it too. Believe me, the three of us probably all appreciate it.
All right, man. We got Ohio State and Wisconsin up next, 3:30 Eastern. Buckeyes -25-point road favorites, 25 and a hook at a lot of shops, 41.5 the total. So always a tricky handicap with a 25.5 as the as the ultimate equalizer, and the total's only 41.5. But what are we thinking here, Rob?
Yeah, and you're right, Drew, because people, you know, just off the cuff wouldn't think that 25.5 is a big deal of a number. You would think that the keys move immediately from 24 to 27 and 28, but not really true. I mean, 31-6 in a game like this could happen very easily. You could have Ohio State and lose by a hook. 38-13 could happen very easily. 35-10, et cetera, et cetera. 25.5, odds makers aren't dummies. That half means a lot when it's attached to a 25. So be careful there. However, all that being said, Luke Fickell, I don't know that he's going to last the season either. I mean, what has happened to the Badger program, and like I said just a couple of seconds ago, lose 37-0 to Iowa. They're 128th out of 136 teams in FBS as far as yards per carry are concerned. And Wisconsin has been built on the rushing game forever, and they can't run the football. The offensive line is not very good this year. Nothing's really very good. Billy Edwards Jr., the quarterback that they got from Maryland, injured in the lineup, out of the lineup. So there's been no stability at quarterback. And the defense is just at this point in time, week 8 is worn down. I think you could see it a little bit last week in the Iowa game. And they're not going to get any help from Ohio State, who's the best defensive team in the nation. So if Iowa can shut you out, I mean, just if we're going to use common logic, it would tell us that, Wisconsin, maybe they get to 7. And then if they get to 7, does Ohio State get to 33 or better? They probably do. I think their offense is coming around at the right time. So for me, it would have to be Ohio State or a pass. But again, I'm not somebody who likes to get involved laying huge numbers like this. But just to, again, maybe dispute a fallacy that some out there watching us, and we always like to talk a little bit of gambling theory here. Generally, when you're presented with a favorite at a price like this, you think that they have to score a bunch, and the immediate reaction is to how good is their offense. But you can cover a number like this strictly on defense as well. Like I say, if Wisconsin gets held to 10 or less, Ohio State doesn't have to go to great lengths to get to the 35, 38 point mark in this one. So like I say, Iowa did it by 37 last week against this team. Ohio State probably can as well.
Robbie, a little bit more of a competitive point spread up next. Pretty good game here. 8:00 Eastern, Utah, BYU. This is a rivalry. I believe it's called the Holy War. I might be wrong on that, but it's Utah -3 as the road favorite. There's 3.5 as well. It's actually a split line, 3 or 3.5. 49 being the total. This is in Provo, but these two teams aren't far from each other. Utah, BYU here, Rob.
Yeah, this is up your alley, Drew. This is one of those big rivalry games. I don't know anybody.
Is it called the Holy War?
It is called the Holy War.
Yeah.
And these two, a lot of similarities, I would say, as far as trench play is concerned, as far as defensive ability is concerned, the running game is concerned. BYU, after Jake Retzlaff got tossed out of BYU, I think people were kind of concerned, at least in our industry, kind of concerned at what BYU would do at quarterback here. But again, Bear Bachmeier has come through. It's funny watching a quarterback number 47 run around the field, but it's the number he wears, and he's played very, very well as a freshman so far. I like the Utah situation a little better offensively. Utah's got a little bit of revenge in this game. And Utah has dominated recent series history here, Drew. I think it's either 7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 won by Utah over the last decade. Last year, it was a 3-turnover loss to BYU. So certainly they'll be – and remember, Utah's quarterback play was so messed up last year and now in much better shape. So I would lean on Utah a little bit, but I didn't bet the game because the more I watch BYU, the more I get sold on BYU at this point in time. Again, Bachmeier doesn't necessarily play like a freshman, and he's as good running the football as he has been passing the football, so he's a true dual threat. I think Utah will win, but I'm a little scared at this point in time to pull the trigger on a Utah play.
Robbie, going from Provo, Utah here to Birmingham, Alabama. I think I know where you're going with this one, but this one has some changes as well. It's Memphis and UAB, and Trent Dilfer, I believe, was fired by the Blazers here. So we get a change for this week's game. But it's Memphis -21.5 as the road favorite, 62 being the total. Normally, I would say, Robbie, we're attacking this over, and I'm pretty confident you are as well. But with the change from Trent Dilfer, maybe that changes things. So what are we thinking here in Birmingham, Alabama?
Yeah, in this one, Drew, what I have circled is to just target a specific here. And I think I would target Memphis first half, -12.5. A couple of things here. They're a big favorite against UAB. But what's on deck for Memphis is South Florida. And that's going to wind up being an American Athletic Conference AAC showdown between these two. So you're a huge favorite against a team like UAB. You probably want to get out healthy. I think we talked about this situation with Ole Miss a little earlier last week against Washington State. And by the fourth quarter, maybe you're just playing out the string. So I would rather attack Memphis with the thought process that they'll get out early, get out quickly against a defenseless UAB team, and not have to worry about the point spread late in the game, not have to worry about Memphis trying to score late in the game, UAB being able to score late in the game, all those things. If it were on normal footing, I'd be with you. I would think it's probably an over. UAB games, you just have to look that direction. The coaching change, does it give UAB any extra fuel to their fire? I'm not sure. Trent Dilfer's probably a guy who should have been gone last year. Didn't really do much for this program. So to me, I think the right way to play it is just to get after Memphis first half. And then if you can cash first half ticket, you can relax.
Yeah, I like where your head's at there. As we got Wyoming and Air Force up next, two of the highest elevation teams in FBS football. We are seeing the Falcons -4, -4.5, depending where you're shopping, 58 being the total.
Well, this one, I mean, you have to know where I'm going here because it's all I talk about every week we're on. It's going to be the over. And it's interesting to say over 58 with Wyoming in the mix, right? But Air Force, I mean, sometimes you get ahead of the curve on stuff, Drew, and I've been, luckily enough, ahead of the curve on these Air Force overs. Saw it like in week 2, and I think I've cashed 4 tickets in a row. They have not gone under the total once all season long. And I think you can get to this 58 or better number just based on this. Wyoming, the last 2 weeks, for what it's worth, has gone away from what we know as traditional Wyoming, and they're throwing the ball. They've thrown for 558 yards the last 2 weeks. They've thrown in excess of near 70 passes the last 2 weeks, and they've scored 26 points per game in their last 2 games against, I believe it was San Jose and UNLV. Air Force's defense is worse than anybody's in the nation, and if you can throw the football and you're playing Air Force, how about this? Air Force last 4 games, 310 yards allowed through the air, 457 yards allowed through the air, 339 and 377. They're not going to stop you if you can throw the football. Wyoming's shown the last couple of weeks they can throw the football. So I think over 58. As long as weather's good, again, I haven't checked Colorado Springs yet, but once I do, I can almost guarantee I'll be on over 58.
And Robbie, when do you normally check the weather? Are you checking it early in the week, or do you not trust it as much, or does it depend where the game is? Like if it's in South Florida, don't check it until Thursday or Friday.
Yeah, I do kind of look on Monday, Drew, but I don't put a lot of stock into it, weather reports on Monday. So I like to wait probably until late Thursday night. Friday morning is generally when I'll make decisions on, and it's got to be a bad weather area, right? Like we're heading into the time when the Rocky Mountains could have issues. The Southeast sometimes can be, caught up in rain. And so that type of thing, the Midwest, as we get into November, maybe 20-degree temps, higher winds, those types of things, I really would like to wait until, late Thursday night, Friday morning before I make a final decision.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because particularly in October, we're right in the middle of October, it's kind of hit or miss. It's actually a great time to go to some college football games for some great weather sometimes, but now it's getting a little, sometimes it might not be. So that's a great point. It depends kind of the time of year. Let's head to a place that is usually great weather, Tempe, Arizona. Arizona State hosting Texas Tech. Man, this Red Raiders team, talk about a team covering some numbers. -7, -7.5, kind of a split line right now as the road favorite, 52 being the total in this Big 12 matchup.
Yeah, there's no way, Drew, you could watch Texas Tech this year more than once and just not be impressed with what they're doing. And again, I'll say we've always known they're a good offensive team. They always are, but they can never play defense. This year, that defense is really good. It's a real defense. Yeah. Again, we'll say NIL money, well spent, Texas Tech. You put your money in good places because defensively, they showed it again last week. In the Big 12, you really don't get a break as far as opposing offenses are concerned. You're usually facing a really potent offense each and every week. And Texas Tech just keeps dismantling them one by one. The Utah game in Salt Lake was probably the most impressive, but last week was impressive too. They had a couple of guys on the injury report, including their starting middle linebacker, who's the stud on the team. And he did play, and they looked really good. Baron Morton, the quarterback, who in my own personal opinion, and again, I'll drift slightly here, but we get an awful lot of talk each and every week about who the best quarterbacks in the country are, about who might go first round NFL draft at quarterback. Baron Morton probably doesn't get as much talk as he should get for his ability to throw the football, but he got hurt again last week. We'll see if he plays. It looks like Sam Leavitt, the Arizona State quarterback, will play in this game, but I don't know how much difference it makes. Arizona State has not looked like the same offense, even with Leavitt and Jordan Tyson. He's an NFL wide receiver, but it just hasn't gotten going without Cam Scatterbo in that backfield this year. And I don't know that it gets going against Texas Tech. Like I say, defensively, they've been outstanding all season long. Fleet of wide receivers, very good ground game. I can't play this game any other way than Texas Tech. They've shown really quick, if you're worried or nervous about laying this type of price, and it's been bet down considerably since Leavitt is seemingly now going to play. If you're worried about laying 7.5 on the road, just think back to the Utah game. There's no tougher venue. Utah tried to start that game early to make it even rougher on Texas Tech, and it just didn't matter. Texas Tech blew that team out with a backup quarterback, by the way. The backup came into that game because Baron Morton got hurt in that one as well. This is a pretty well-stocked team. I'd play Texas Tech.
We'll move to Lexington, Kentucky up next. It's Texas at Kentucky, and Texas laying doubles, minus 12, 12.5, 43 and a hook being the total. Texas at Kentucky, 7 o'clock Eastern here, Rob.
All right, so I may hate myself for taking this stance on this game, Drew, but after watching Oklahoma and Texas last week, and we all know John Mateer probably shouldn't have played in that game. He's a tough guy. He's a gamer, but having hand surgery and the way he looked throwing the ball wasn't right. Still, I think I saw some things in Texas, Drew, from my viewpoint to say I think they've turned a corner. And so I would be willing to lay the points here against Kentucky. Now, that being said, Kentucky's off a bye. We know Mark Stoops is almost the SEC king of taking one of the big dogs each and every year and either upsetting them or playing them to, a 1-point game or a 3-point game. That's what you fear here is Kentucky defensively. You certainly don't fear them offensively. I just feel like Texas is way better than what they've shown the majority of this season. And last week's game where they were able to stretch out the margin with their offense against Oklahoma, I believe that's going to start to kind of snowball in effect, and they'll become better offensively as we get down the backstretch of this season. So for me, it would be Texas again. Come Sunday night, I could hate myself for thinking that way because Texas hasn't really proven yet, but we do try to get ahead of the curve on some of these, and I'm going to try Texas here this week.
Yeah, you make a great point. I mean, Texas, I think, is the more talented team. They've looked better on the field recently, but you brought up the spot. I mean, Texas is off of playing Oklahoma, and Kentucky's at home off of a bye. So the spot screams Kentucky. But, yeah, it's definitely, a juggle here. What's more important? Great breakdown there, Robbie. We got next one up. Another, I would call it interesting, Washington State and Virginia. This is 6:30 Eastern in Charlottesville, and UVA is minus 17.5 as the home favorite, 55 and a hook being the total. Washington State off of that close game against Ole Miss. Another East Coast game. I'm questioning myself. I wonder if they stayed on the East Coast here, Robbie, or if they went back to Pullman. But either way, I'll throw it over to you. Washington State, Virginia.
Yeah, you know what? I remember we had this situation earlier this year, and maybe
Georgia Southern.
Yeah, because mid-major Matt knew, right? Mid-major Matt was the one who, and he lives in Virginia, and he's close with all these Virginia
He didn't know,
programs.
though.
He
I
didn't
asked him the
know.
question.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
Good job, Drew.
No, because they
Yeah.
keep that information pretty tight, these college football teams.
Yeah.
And they let you know on their social media that they're on the plane, but they don't really tell anybody before that, I've noticed.
Yeah, it is interesting to figure out for Washington State, who played Ole Miss last week. We've talked about that game a little bit. I think they were the beneficiary of an Ole Miss look ahead. I don't know that, although Washington State, let's face it, they've progressed a little bit last couple of weeks. But again, this has been one of my staples this year. I talked about Air Force earlier. I've talked about Kansas State over the total ad nauseum during our segments. We don't have K-State this week because they're on a bye. And Virginia's the third team involved in that. I mean, Virginia, for me, has been a ticket cashing machine where over is concerned. Chandler Morris, we knew him at North Texas when he was lighting up the scoreboard for that team, and he's come to Virginia and done the same exact thing. Their offense has been nearly unstoppable, and I don't know that Washington State's going to find a way in their second road game far, far away from Pullman, Washington. I don't know that they're going to stop Virginia here in this particular instance. Defensively, can they shut down Washington State enough to cover this big number? I'm not sure, and I'm not sure that I'll care, Drew, because for me, I'll be on either full game total or I'll be on team total with Virginia. I think mostly, though, I'd probably prefer full game total because I do think Washington State against this defense can find their way to, let's give them in between the a little more than 17. How about around the 20 mark here for them? And Virginia probably exceeds 40. So this number looks a little low to me. I think before we came on the show, I think I saw some 56s out there. 56 to me just seems too low for a Virginia game.
Yeah, guys, I still couldn't find it in terms of Washington State travel. I do remember like Ole Miss. Washington State didn't plan this, playing Ole Miss and then playing Virginia back-to-back weekends in week 7, week 8. They actually took it for money reasons because Ole Miss was supposed to play Wake Forest, and Wake Forest just paid Ole Miss not to play the game because Ole Miss blew out Wake Forest so bad the year before. And then Washington State just stepped into the Wake Forest spot last week. That's why this scheduling spot is what it is. But yeah, we can use it to our handicap in some form or fashion here coming up to Saturday night as we got Oregon and Rutgers up next, 6:30 Eastern in Piscataway, and the Ducks. Heavy road favorites here, -17.5, Robbie, 59 and a hook being the total.
Well, this for me is easy. This is Oregon team total over. Rutgers, again, this is like the fourth team we've talked about where this year you can almost mechanically make a play to the over where Rutgers is involved because they have changed their colors so drastically, Drew, from a team under Greg Schiano that I feel like their slogan used to be chop wood, chop wood, chop wood at Rutgers, and which was basically the old Rex Ryan ground and pound type of thing, run the football and play defense. And it's not that. Kaliakmanis, the quarterback, Ethan Kaliakmanis for Rutgers, has changed everything offensively. This kid's probably an NFL quarterback. They become explosive on that side of the football, and they can't stop anybody from scoring against them. So you have Oregon, a team that comes off a loss. I get it's cross-country travel. Totally understand, but it won't be Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks' first time going cross-country since joining the Big Ten. By now, they should have that type of stuff figured out. I also know what they'll figure out, and Dante Moore, the quarterback, will figure out here is that Rutgers is pretty easy to score against. So team total here was 37.5, I think, Drew, for Oregon. If they don't score 40 points in this game, I'd be entirely surprised. It would take probably multiple turnovers down in scoring territory by Oregon to prevent that from happening. I'm going to be on Oregon team total over. Probably should also be on the full game over. But my problem is that Oregon's defense still is pretty darn good. And we'll see if Rutgers can dent that defense the way they've handled others inside the Big Ten. I wouldn't be surprised if they do, obviously, but I'd rather put my trust in the known commodity. That's Oregon's offense against Rutgers' defense.
All right, Robbie, a kind of rivalry game here again. USC and Notre Dame, the Fighting Irish -9.5 as the home favorite, 61 being the total. USC at Notre Dame.
Boy, it seems excessive, Drew. I mean, I saw this number, and my immediate reaction was got to play USC plus the points. But I haven't done it yet. And so obviously there's some second thoughts or some considerations toward the Notre Dame side, mainly the fact that they've been so good offensively right now. USC does one thing and one thing well defensively, and that's get after the passer. They're inside the top 5, Drew. Don't ask me to be exact on this. They're inside the top 5 in sacks across the country, whether that's number 2, number 3, I forget, but they're definitely a top 5 team as far as pressure is concerned and sacking the quarterback. So CJ Carr could be under a little bit of heat start the season. Notre Dame's offensive line was regarded as one of the best in the country. Has not totally panned out that way, but they're still a good unit. So maybe they can neutralize some of the pressure and give Carr time to throw. And if he gets it, they'll score. And the other side will score. The one thing I keep coming back to is whether or not I believe that Notre Dame's defense is the defense that we saw the first couple of weeks that couldn't stop anybody, or is the defense that kind of turned the corner with the Arkansas game. USC is just such a potent offense. I don't think anybody can completely stop them. We saw Illinois, I think it was like 3 weeks ago. USC went to Illinois. Illinois made it a super early time start, 11 o'clock Central for a Pacific time zone team. USC didn't wake up till the second half, but when they woke up, they wound up with like 31 or 32 points. It's a good offense. Totals high for a reason. It sort of makes me have to think twice about wanting to bet it over. But I do think 9.5 is probably too much. It seems to me USC can go stride for stride with Notre Dame.
Yeah, I remember that game, Robbie. This game will be 7:30 Eastern time, though. So West Coast traveling east, probably not as much part of the handicap. All right, 2 games left here. Tennessee and Alabama, 7:30 Eastern kick here. Bama -8-point home favorites, 59 being the total in Tuscaloosa.
I feel like Missouri left a few points on the table last week at home against Alabama. Drew, was a really good football game. And in the end, Mizzou gave it their best shot to come back and potentially tie, but just couldn't get there. I will say that Ty Simpson now looks like one of the best quarterbacks in America, and probably has every opportunity to light up the Tennessee defense here. Alabama, I'll make this one really simple. Alabama's on the type of roll right now that I don't want to get in front of. However, all that being said, a Josh Heupel-led offense is one that I don't want to get in front of either here when they're getting points. Heupel can turn up the pressure as far as game pace is concerned and wear down a defense. And I think that's what Tennessee will try to do here. Let's remember, Alabama's off now 3 consecutive monster games. It was Georgia at Georgia. It was revenge at home against Vanderbilt. And then it was at Missouri against an undefeated Missouri team. And they came through with flying colors in all 3. Now they return back home. Is this kind of a sigh of relief game? Or is this we're just that good all of a sudden and we're going to continue to roll against Tennessee? I'm not sure. This game used to have, is it the same? I feel like this game is always played at the same time of year, whether that be second week of October or third week of October. I just feel like it used to have a little more luster to it than it does nowadays. So maybe a little consideration for the dog. But again, I don't want to step in front of either one of these sides.
Yeah, the Bush push back in the day. Remember that one? Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush. But guys, we got 1 game left. Hitting the chat box a little bit. Appreciate everybody chiming in. Ed, we got James asking for touch on USF over under. Of course, we did hit that, guys. Every game on the board. You can go listen to it. And We got premium picks here saying Vino, the Wager Talk GOAT. Absolutely. You can check them out at wagertalk.com. 9-3 last week. So Robbie Vino seeing it well. Rob, before we get to the last game on the card, do you like that USF FAU over?
FAU, again, I've been talking about pet teams of mine and playing overs with them. And FAU, of course, with Zach Kittley as the head coach there. We know him from Houston Baptist, from Western Kentucky, brought his quarterback with him here. And they've been doing the job. But this number is like 73, Drew, USF and Florida Atlantic. And I'll say this, I don't like the over as much this week, simply because I think we saw it last week. USF went into North Texas, and in the end, North Texas scored 38 points. But a lot of those were garbage points because USF was ahead by so much. When it really counted, USF's defense was the better of those two units, their defense against the North Texas offense. And North Texas's offense, I have a lot more respect for than what FAU has going for them right now. It'll be better in the future personnel-wise. I love their tempo, but I don't know that they can get to 73 here, these two teams, because I don't know that Florida Atlantic can help out enough.
That's a great point. USF is a wagon. That team is strong. And FAU is a team, Robbie, they'll score a lot if like they can move the ball on the opposing defense. If they can't, they're not necessarily going to score a lot. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not like they're going to be able to manufacture points. They're just going to go really fast. And if they can move the ball on you, then they're going to score 40 plus. But if they can't, they're probably not going to figure it out, in the middle of the second quarter type deal. That is one thing to worry about. I thought that was a great point. A couple other people here. Nick, thank you for chiming in. Adam saying Vanderbilt money line. Vanderbilt's the way I would go if you made me bet that game, Adam. But I don't know. Laying a number here, it's a little difficult. I haven't touched that. Anything there quickly, Rob?
Nothing that I've bet. So I'll reserve any comment just because I didn't bet it. I don't want to put people on a side or something that I'm not really playing myself as of right now.
All right, Rob. We got a Hawaii's not playing on the island here. So this is about as true as a degenerate special gets, Rob. Last game on the card, 4/19, 4/20, 10:30 Eastern kick, nationally televised, Florida State and Stanford. Florida State, the fan base kind of down on them now. There's likely not going to be a lot of Seminole fans here, and I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of Stanford fans either. So the true degenerate special, -17.5, -18. That is the Seminoles as the road favorite. 54.5 being the total. The get back game, last game on the card, degenerate special here, Robbie. What are we doing?
Yeah, Stanford thoroughly let me down here. So my apologies to the folks who watched last week and listened to me leave you with SMU Stanford over the total as a best bet. One of the very few losers that we had last week. 10 points scored against an SMU defense. It seemed like Stanford really didn't want to be there, or they weren't awake in the Central Time Zone, one or the other. They scored a touchdown, their only touchdown, in basically a 1-minute drill right before halftime, and then couldn't get anything done second half and really didn't do anything much of the game. Now they return back home. I was on that game last week simply because Stanford had shown the ability 2 weeks prior, back-to-back, to be able to at least throw the football and score. Maybe they do it here against FSU, Drew, who I don't know what their level of interest is going to be. Flying to Palo Alto, favored against this team. You've lost 3 straight. What started out to be so promising with Castellanos bragging about how he'll beat Bama and did so, and now it's all gone downhill way too fast. They don't play a lot of defense, so Stanford has a chance there. Certainly Florida State has given up points, but they've given up points to really good offensive teams. Virginia, I talked about. Miami, we know. Last week, it was Pittsburgh, who with the freshman quarterback the last 2 weeks has been dynamite. So in short, I do think Stanford will be able to score because I do think Florida State will be somewhat disinterested, but I don't think they'll stop Castellanos. It's funny in college sports, Drew, and maybe I should say in all pro sports, it's like offensive guys whether or not they care about the game itself, they always want their numbers. Like an offensive guy always wants to score a touchdown, rush for 100, throw for 300. They care about that much. Sometimes when you're down on the season, the game doesn't mean as much. You're not as sad after losing a game. But, man, make sure I get my numbers. And I think this could be a Florida State situation where it's just like, man, let me get my numbers.
Robbie, what if I threw out there Stanford money line plus 700 to end the Saturday?
You know what? You can make a good enough case for it, Drew. You know what I mean? You certainly can. Situationally, like we say, I mean, we just pointed them all out, right? The travel's tough. The interest level is probably minimal. I mean, you could make a good case to plus 700 is nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah, and I'm reading up here, the farm, it's natural grass. They're probably letting it grow all, for the last 2 weeks here, and going to be a slow playing surface. I don't know, guys. If you're into a gamble, throw out $100 to win 700 end of the Saturday night. Stanford plus 700 on the degenerate special money line. Roll the dice here. But Rob, man, we got best bet time. Did you like any of them more than the others?
I like a few of them this week, Drew. I think folks that listen could tell which way I'm leaning, but I will leave you with the Oregon team total. I'm just going to clarify a number so I don't leave everybody with a bad number here. Sometimes what I bet in the beginning of the week is different from what it is now. I'm seeing 37.5 as a consensus number. There's juice to be laid with that, guys. About $1.30. Between $1.30 and $1.35 on the 37.5, but well worth it because 38 is such a key number. I'm going to leave you with that as the best bet for this week. I'd be surprised if Oregon doesn't find their way to 41, 42 or more.
All right. Oregon Ducks team total over 37.5 minus 130 to the over. That is Rob Vino's best bet. Robbie, great stuff as always, my man. What do you got planned this weekend? And any final thoughts before we shut this down?
Yeah, well, again, we like to make sort of a tradition out of this, just thanking the audience. This show has been long running since our days at Sports Memo, Drew. And again, I say it almost every week, but we like to thank the guys who have watched us since day one, which I don't know, maybe you can recall. Maybe it's 2010, maybe it's 11. I forget when every game on the board started, maybe prior to that. But for those of you who have been with us all that time, those of you who are just joining us new to gambling and watch us every week, appreciate all you guys. Hopefully we're putting you in the right direction toward the ticket cashing line. We don't want to be in the one where you stand next to the garbage can and throw it out. So you want to be cashing tickets.
Rob, awesome stuff, man. Great analysis. Follow him on Twitter at Rob Vino Sports. Check them out, wagertalk.com on that 9-3 run as well. And right here on the Every Game on the Board podcast. Guys, that's going to do it for week 8. We'll be back for week 9. Come back and join us. Until then, enjoy the weekend. Thanks for tuning in and cash those tickets.